Hey everyone, it's time for the playoffs and time to talk a little Darlington with Kyle Petty and Brad Daugherty. I'm Dave Burns. So glad you could join us today. Kyle, let's start with you about Darlington. It's been a place you've known your whole life. The King won there 3 times. What kind of place is that, and why is it so special to the sport?
I think it's so special to the sport because it was the first super speedway. Understand that this sport came out of cow pastures and dirt tracks. And all of a sudden, Harold built this place in Darlington, South Carolina, and this was a super speedway, a little over a mile long. They fit it into a crazy piece of property, so it's almost egg-shaped. And if you look at the history of the sport, when we talk about Joe Weatherly, when we talk about Buck Baker, when we talk about Lee Petty, when we talk about the greats from the 50s, their resume reads with Darlington wins. That's what it's all about. That was their Daytona. That was their superstar speedway. The fascinating part about it and what makes it so tough in today's time is the pole speed there in 1950 was a little bit less than 180 miles an hour. 80 miles an hour. Now the pole speeds for us tick 170, 175 miles an hour. We're running almost 100 miles an hour faster than this racetrack was designed for. And you know what? They've not changed this racetrack. They've repaved it, but they didn't change the width of it. They didn't change how wide the banking was. They didn't change where the walls were, except putting the safer barriers in, but they didn't change where anything was. So a track that was designed for upwards of probably close to 100, they figured they would run that fast at some point in time in the future. They're now running almost double that. So that makes it incredibly tough for the competitors.
And Brad, I know you're a big fan. What about putting this track as the first race in the playoffs? Talk a little Darlington, but also what it means to have something so tough as the first race.
Yeah, I echo what his sentiments. I mean, this racetrack is so fast to watch anymore. I mean, back in the day, the guys would run, like Kyle said, 100, 110, 115, 120, 130 miles an hour. We're running 180. I think the interesting thing, though, is with this new car and it being so sturdy on that right side, the older car, you really had to pay attention to what you were doing. You were going to get up into the fence at Darlington because you're trying to use every ounce of that or every inch of that racetrack trying to gain speed so you get your Darlington stripe. The new race car is a little sturdier, so I think you see guys really diving that car in hard to the corner as they come up off the corner. They're not afraid to touch the wall. It's remarkable to watch this racetrack. I think it's great because you have to race the racetrack all day long. If you make the mistake of racing your competitor at Darlington, you're going to be in trouble. So I think it's great to start the playoffs here because you have to be on your game. It's one of the toughest racetracks. Only the toughest guys win here. I think it's a great way to start as we roll into the playoffs.
So Kyle, what do you think about this being race number 1 in the playoffs? And why don't you end it with who you might see in victory lane? Who's your winner Sunday in Darlington?
So and listen, I echo a lot of what Brad just said. A lot of the reasons that he gave for being the first race. It should be the first race. And I say that, and they'll probably change it next year or the year after that. Now that I've said that. But it should be the first race for a lot of reasons. The history of our sport is tied to it in so many ways and so deep. And we all know by doing TV and we all know by being fans of the sport that the first race of any round is critical. You can lose points, so many points here that you can never make up. It's a lot easier in this system to lose points than it is to gain points. So if you come out of Darlington with a bad day, then chances are you're not going to make it to the next round. We've seen it year in and year out. So that puts the pressure on these guys to right out of the box, first rattle out of the box. Those 16 guys have to perform at a higher level at this racetrack maybe than they ever have in their life. And why not start the playoffs with the pressure on? And I think Darlington does that. I think, for me, the guy that's going to come out on top is Lord Byron. William Byron, I think he made a statement a couple of weeks ago at Watkins Glen that they have put their name in the hat for this championship, and his march to Phoenix starts right here in the South in Darlington, South Carolina.
Brad, how about you? Make a case for your Sunday winner.
Yeah, boy, I tell you what, William Byron's going to be difficult to beat throughout this entire playoffs. At Darlington, for me, you have to get in a tremendous rhythm throughout the day to maintain speed, to keep going forward. You're going to make a few mistakes, but the guy that really pops up who has that ability is Denny Hamlin. If Denny can get into a good rhythm, he is so difficult to beat night in and night out. He's got a tremendous pit crew. They make mistakes all the time on pit road and overcome them. So I think it's a guy like Denny Hamlin who has a great opportunity to score a victory in the playoffs right out of the gate at Darlington.
Sunday could be Byron, could be the 11 of Denny Hamlin, 14 others in the playoffs vying for it to make the first round theirs by a win on Sunday. Thanks for watching NASCAR American Motormouths, presented by Toyota.